Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to give everyone a minute or so to get on here. Today, I'm going to be talking about how Charlotte Mason taught reading, and then I'll be going through the 100 Gentle Lessons in Sight and Sound curriculum. So, welcome, everyone. I can see on Instagram, like, who's joining. Hi, Angela. You're so sweet. But if you're on Facebook, if you could just put that you're watching, because for some reason I can't see who it actually is, and I want to be able to say hi to everybody that's watching. So, yeah. So I hope you all are enjoying your summer. I know everybody's gearing up for the start of school, starting back. Went to Walmart yesterday, and they had all their school supplies, and it's just exciting, but I know it can also be really overwhelming to get started on the school year. Hi, everyone. And, you know, especially with teaching reading to our kids, right? It can seem like this big monumental task, and it can seem very intimidating, right? We want to make sure that we get it right, that we do the right thing, that our kids know how to read, because we love books and we love reading. We want to share that love with them. And hey, Lindsay. Hi, Sherry. Hi, everyone on Instagram too. I'm going to try to do like both. So hopefully if I'm not looking at you, it's because I'm on my computer on both Facebook and Instagram. It's my first time doing this, so I feel really cool. So hopefully you all think I'm cool. Hey, Laura. Welcome, everyone. So as I was saying, today I'm going to talk about how Miss Mason taught reading, and then I'm going to talk about the 100 Gentle Lessons in Sight and Sound curriculum that just came out. So just to give you a little bit background on myself, I'm an elementary education major, and back when I was studying to be a teacher, I went to Penn State, and this was 20 years ago, which when I say that, it really, wow, makes me feel really old. But anyway, so back 20 years ago when I was studying to become a teacher, the big push was all whole language. And so the whole language theory of teaching reading, if you're not familiar with it, is basically that students will learn how to read by seeing a lot of words in print. And so, you know, having them read these simple stories over and over and over again, putting signs all around your classroom, labeling like clock, trash can, bathroom, just getting them to see these words over and over again. And then, you know, you would have readers that would be based on all the words that they just learned how to read by sight. And so I remember as a student in college, as we were being trained in this method, I just remember thinking, like, really? Like, there's got to be more to teaching reading than just showing kids a bunch of words. Maybe I'm missing something. You know, I'm young, I'm only 19. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But I just remember sitting in that reading class thinking, this cannot be right. There has to be more than that. And I think really it was based on my own experience learning how to read as a child. I don't know why or how, but I distinctly remember learning how to read. I don't know if any of you are like that, where you remember, like, you can actually remember how you learned how to read. I know a lot of people just gradually happens intuitively. Charlotte Mason talks about that this kind of natural process happens, but I distinctly remember sitting down at my like laminate 70s kitchen table. We had the avocado green fridge and oven. I'm really dating myself. And just sitting down with a book that my parents had read to me over and over and over again, and then just trying to point to each word and say it. I probably had the book memorized, but in my mind, I had taught myself how to read. So I was like super proud of myself. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was raised on Sesame Street and this show called The Letter People. Okay, is anybody else as old as me? Does anybody remember Sesame Street and The Letter People? The Letter People had these like little cartoons, like each letter was their own little character, and then they would get together and they would make these words. And watching that and Sesame Street really did help me with like the sounding out. You know, like on Sesame Street, you have the monster with the sound and the monster with the sound, and you put them together and they can read the words. And so I remembered my own experience learning how to read, and part of that was, okay, thank you, I'm glad some of you remember that show. Some of that was because my parents had read me this book over and over again, but also part of it was because I had watched, yay, someone else remembers The Letter People. I need to go see if The Letter People are on like Netflix or something, because that show was really super awesome. And so I remember back to my own experience of learning how to read, and I'm like, it was more than just having a bunch of words everywhere. But of course, I was 19 and I wanted to get a good grade in that class, so I just told my professors whatever they wanted to hear. And I thought, well, I'm never going to really need to know this anyway. My goal had always been to teach upper elementary. And so my first job out of college, I was teaching 5th grade, and I didn't need to know how to teach them reading. So whether it was whole language, whether it was phonics, it didn't really matter to me. I was just, 5th grade, they already knew how to read. And I taught 5th grade in public school for several years, and then I had my first child, and I didn't want to go back to teaching full time. And so my only option at that time was to teach kindergarten part time. And so that was a huge jump, because I was like, I'm never going to teach young children. And I was like, okay, it's important to me to be able to stay home with her at least part of the day. And so I made that jump from teaching 5th grade to kindergarten. And then I was like, oh no, now I actually have to know how to teach kids how to read. And what am I going to do? And the place where I was at, the lady was very much phonics. So that was my first exposure to a pure phonics curriculum. Very much learning the letter sounds, combining those simple words, cat, bag, and then adding in the short O. We used Bob books there. And so by the time I left kindergarten, they were still mostly reading consonant, vowel, consonant words. They were, learned some beginning blends, bull, terst, and some ending blends, those kind of things. But the stories that we were reading were still very simplistic. And I just remember thinking, like, these are really boring stories. Dot has a bag. Sam sat on Bob. As a child, that could be just very tedious. And I noticed that some of my kids really wanted to start reading other things, and that just reading those simple consonant, vowel, consonant books were just really draining on them. And so I just kind of said, okay, I need to figure out how I believe kids should learn how to read and how I want to do it. And so then I left that program, and I went to go teach at a private Christian school. And I was teaching kindergarten there too, but it was full day kindergarten. But by this point, my first child was in kindergarten, so she could come and be in my kindergarten class. So that was super fun. Hey, Jennifer. Hi to everyone that's joined. Sorry, I can't keep up with everyone. But welcome. I'm glad you're here. So my daughter was in my kindergarten class, and it was this private Christian school, and they were just starting. So they had bought a huge boxed reading curriculum from a major Christian school publisher. Okay. And I remember looking at it, and it was kindergarten. So it had a bunch of worksheets that the kids were supposed to do every day. It had these, I don't even remember what they called them, phonics type ladders, where it was just random short vowel combinations with a consonant on the end. So it'd be like ag, ig, og, ug, egg, and ib, ab, ub, ob. And I'm like, those aren't even words. Like, I want to go through these with my class, teaching them how to put these sounds together for made up things. That doesn't make any sense. And so I remember sitting down with the principal and saying, I really don't know if I can teach this reading curriculum. I might not be the person that you're looking for. How sold are you on teaching with this curriculum? And she said, well, the board had approved it, and they spent a lot of money on this, a lot. Had all these different pieces and all these different readers and different things you're supposed to use. And I said, okay, well, how about I use it some, but would you mind if I add in a lot of my own things? Let me show you what I want to do. And that's when I had kind of come up with the idea of using nursery rhymes to teach reading. And once I kind of showed her what I was going to do, she was like, yeah, that looks fabulous. I agree with you. Just make sure that you can add some of this other stuff in so that the board knows that we're using this as well. And I said, okay. So I did that my first year of teaching kindergarten at that private Christian school. And then the next year she was like, yeah, just use your own stuff. We're not going to order all this expensive stuff again, because we really see the benefit of what you have been doing. And so it was funny. I was cleaning my garage, and I'm not a person who keeps things. For those of you who know me, I'm like a total purger. I do not like stuff everywhere. But when I was in my garage this weekend, I found my old kindergarten materials that I had used to teach reading this way. And that just kind of spoke to me. Like, there was a reason why I've saved these all these years. Like, I don't normally save stuff. I don't have anything else from when I taught kindergarten in school. So, but just to show you, this is my little Humpty Dumpty. So I would use this big Post-it chart to teach reading to like a whole group of children. And then on the back, you can see we're learning the phonics rules through our poem here. And then I would have the students kind of find those words, if we were learning like a sight word like all or men, again. And then I would also use this for the sound lessons. You can kind of see there's a little bit of dry erase marker still left. We were learning the all family through this rhyme. So that's actually what I did when I taught kindergarten. And it had always been kind of like a goal of mine to take these materials and put them into some kind of reading curriculum. But I think that's probably why I hung on to these things for so long. But the timing just, you know, it wasn't happening or whatnot. And so then I, after teaching kindergarten at school for a while, I brought my own kids home to homeschool them and, you know, started using this to homeschool them as well. And then once I started homeschooling, I became really interested in the Charlotte Mason method. And I was really curious to see, okay, how did she teach reading? I don't want to do something that's completely, even though I really loved it, I don't want to do something that was completely, you know, contrary to what she was saying. So, oh, thanks, Angela. Angela and I used to teach together, so she just said she remembers me teaching. You're so sweet. So let's take a look at what Miss Mason says about teaching reading. So again, going back to like the whole language versus phonics, her method really combines the both, which is, I think, all along what I, as a college student, was thinking, why can't we do both of these at the same time? Wouldn't that be the most effectual way to do it? And it was the way that I had taught with these nursery rhymes as well. And so when I read her volumes and I realized it was the same thing I've been doing, I was like, yay! Thank goodness I don't have to reinvent the wheel. But also, it was just really encouraging to me that this is the method that she used as well. So in her volume, Home Education, if you don't have this, you can read it online, on Ambleside Online. You can read her volumes for free. And if you only have time to read the portion where she talks about teaching reading, it is so worth it before you decide, you know, how you want to approach reading with your children, whether you use the 100 lessons or use something completely different. But I really encourage you to read what she actually has to say about it. And it's only about 15, 20-page chunk out of this whole book. Where she talks about how she teaches reading. So you don't have to read the entire thing if that just seems overwhelming. You could just read this little chunk, but it really helps kind of, I think it's really important that you understand the why of something before you think through the how or the what. So understanding the why of how you're teaching reading before you just jump in and open a book and start using it with your family. So here she compares the ordinary method of teaching reading in her day and how she approached it in her schools. So this is the ordinary method. This is on page 206 of Volume 1, Home Education. Now compare the steady progress and constant interest and liveliness of such lessons. So she's talking about the lessons that she uses that are lively and engaging. So compare this with the dreary weariness of the ordinary reading lesson. The child blunders through a page or two in a dreary monotone without expression, with imperfect enunciation. He comes to a word he does not know, and he spells it. That throws no light on the subject, and he's told the word. He repeats it, but as he has made no mental effort to secure the word, the next time he meets with it in the same process is gone through. The reading lesson for that day comes to an end. The pupil has been miserably bored and has not acquired one new word. Eventually, he learns to read somehow by mere dint of repetition. But consider what an abuse of his intelligence is a system of teaching which makes him undergo daily labor with little or no interest and gives him a distaste for books before he has learned to use them. Wow. can I just tell y'all, like, I just love Charlotte Mason so much. I mean, even though she lived in like Victorian England, she is not afraid to tell you like how it is. She does not mince words, okay? So she's talking about like a deadly weariness of ordinary reading lessons. She's talking about how it's an abuse to a child's intelligence for to have them have this system where they're undergoing labor and labor and they're never getting anywhere and they're never getting any results. And I know, I mean, as an adult, how frustrating that is when I'm trying to work out something and I can't figure it out and I'm going and going, going, going. I can't imagine how the child must feel about that. And then if you flip on over to page 209, she says, the cat sat on the mat. We have all been there, right? If you've taught a kid how to read. We should like to begin to, or how should we like to begin to read German, for example, by tolling over all conceivable combinations of letters, arranged on no principle but similarity of sound. Or worse still, that our reading should be graduated according to the number of letters each word contains. And a lot of reading curriculums do that, 3-letter words, 4-letter words, 5-letter words. We should be lost in a hopeless fog before a page of words of 3 letters, all drearily like one another, with no distinctive features for the eyes to seize upon. But the child, oh, well, children are different. No doubt it is good for the child to grind the mill. But this is only one of the many ways in which children are needlessly and cruelly oppressed. Again, no mincing of words there. And if you've ever learned a foreign language, I mean, think about it. I'm trying to relearn French so I could teach my kids at home because my high school French experience was absolutely terrible. And, if I had to learn French by learning all the different phonics combinations, I would give up. Like, that would be so dreary and boring. No, like, I want to read stories and I want to see the words and I want to learn how to put the words together in an interesting way. That's how I'm learning French as an adult. But, we say, oh, children should be different, right? They should have to grind this mill of seeing these same simple letters. And she's saying, she calls it a hopeless fog of 3-letter words. And I've definitely seen children like this through my years as a kindergarten teacher. I was also a private reading tutor. A lot of those short vowel consonant words look a lot alike. Bog, dog, pot, bag, right? BDP, they all look very much alike. The A's and the O's can be mixed up. And so if they're in this hopeless fog, if these are all the words that they're seeing, right? It can be very discouraging. And then to have to grind the mill. Like, I think of those word ladders I was talking about where the kids are supposed to learn these arbitrary combinations and say them over and over and over. That's kind of just grinding that mill. And she doesn't miss words. She says it's one of the ways that children are needlessly and cruelly oppressed. And I think it goes back to her first principle of children are born persons. She has such a high respect for children's intelligence that we don't want our reading lessons to be insulting to them, even though they don't know how to read yet, right? And that's why we're teaching them. We want to do it in a way where that we're respecting that they're going to be able to know it, a way that's going to be interesting and engaging for them. So it's not this tedious grinding of the mill that she talks about here. And then she compares that with her method here. So if you are able to go back and read this, she talks about a mom kind of gives an example of teaching her son Tommy how to read and how she does that with sight and sound. And so now she's talking about hers here. Let me start. I'll start over here. Okay, so in the first place, let us bear, I'm on page 215 if you wanted to follow along. Yes, risking making them loathe reading. Yes, I definitely agree. I think that droning on and that repetition really can make them loathe reading. Unfortunately, at one point, with one of my kids, we were in a co-op where I had to use a certain reading curriculum with her, and I couldn't teach her the way I kind of had to use my other kids. We had to turn in work and homework, and reading lessons were terrible. They ended in tears most days, and she was frustrated. I was frustrated. Nobody can learn when they're frustrated, right? And nobody can learn when there's this tension of the parent in that atmosphere that makes it so tense. And so I really do think, though, it was this kind of droning on repetition that created so much tension with us with that. So I have seen what it's like to use a different reading method as well. All right, so I'm on page 215 of Home Education here. Now she's going to talk about some more of her philosophy. So in the first place, let us bear in mind that reading is not a science nor an art. Even if it were, the children must still be the first consideration with the educator, but it is not. Learning to read is no more than picking up how we can a knowledge of certain arbitrary symbols for objects and ideas. There are absolutely no right and necessary steps to teaching reading, each of which leads to the next. There is no true beginning, middle, or end. For the arbitrary symbols we must know in order to learn to read are not letters, but words. By illustration, consider the delicate differences of sounds represented by the letter O. To analyze and classify the sounds of O in for, symbols, no, order, to, not, and words is a curious, but not especially useful. It is a curious and especially useful study for a philologist, but a laborious and inappropriate one for a child. It is time we face the facts that letters which compose an English word are full of philological interest, and that their study will be a valuable part of an education by and by. So she's not anti-phonics here. She does teach the kids phonics. But she says, but in the meantime, sound and letter sign are so usely wielded in English that to base the teaching of reading on the sounds of the letters only is to lay up for the child much analytical labor, much mental confusion, due to the irregularities of the language, and some little moral strain in making the sound of a letter in a given word fall under any of the sounds he has been taught. Definitely, what is it we propose in teaching a child to read? So here's her method. A, that he shall know at sight, say some 1,000 words. B, that he shall be able to build up new words with the elements of these. Let him learn 10 new words a day. In 20 weeks, he'll be able to read without any question as to the number of letters in a word. For the second and less important part of our task, the child must know the sounds of the letters and acquire power to throw given sounds into new combinations. What we want is a bridge between the child's natural interest and those arbitrary symbols, which he must become acquainted, and which, as we have seen, are words and not letters. So the things that are going to hold the children's interest are learning these interesting words by sight. And by, they're going to learn the sounds, they're going to learn how to combine them, they're going to learn how to make different word combinations with the words that they've already learned. But that's not where we start. There's not these steps. We must learn all these short vowel words first, and then we must learn all these beginning blends, then we must learn all these ending ends, then we must learn silent E, then we must learn these long vowel combinations. She's saying there isn't this beginning, middle, and end, that we can kind of learn these things simultaneously in a really natural way. So she says that children care for things, not words. His analytical power is very small. So when we're analyzing all these sounds in a word, she's saying, that's not where most children are at. His observing faculty is exceedingly quick and keen. Nothing is too small for him. He will spy out the eye of a fly. Nothing is too intricate. He delights in puzzles. But the thing he learns to know by looking at it is a thing which interests him. Here we have the key to reading. No meaningless combination of letters. Remember I was telling you like that one curriculum where we had to learn all these random things? So she mentions that here. No cla, cli, cli, clo, clue, or ath, eth, if, off, uth should be presented to him. The child should be taught from the first to regard the printed word as he already regards the spoken word, as a symbol of a fact or idea full of interest. How easy to read robin redbreast or buttercups and daisies. The number of letters in the word is no matter. The words generally convey such interesting ideas that the general form and look of them fixes itself on the child's brain by the same law of association of ideas, which make it easy to couple the objects in their spoken names. So here she's saying a bunch of random letter combinations, click, clath, cluff, cluff. I don't even know how to say that. It sounds like a tongue twister, right? Like that doesn't interest a child. That doesn't interest anybody. But buttercups and daisies, robin redbreast, those are interesting. And again, you know, we talk about these living ideas so much in a Charlotte Mason education. And so we want our reading lessons to be full of these living ideas as well, that they're robin redbreast, you know, I can picture that poem, I can picture that bird I saw on my nature walk, buttercups and daisies, you know, I can see the flowers outside my window. I want to learn those things. I'm interested in them, right? And those ideas are going to grow in my mind as well. So that kind of gives you a little picture there of how she felt about the ordinary method of teaching reading at her time, which garnering by what she said seems very phonics only based. And then her method as well, that you're teaching phonics. It's not thrown out the window. It's not whole language here, but that it's in this combination of learning really interesting words, learning words by sight through interesting ways, which I'm going to talk about, and then getting the phonics rules, learning your letter combinations through that way, through an interesting living idea. And so in here, she talks about, on page 217, Tommy's first lesson. And so it says, Mom, and I really like how she writes in this. It's a conversation between two moms, right? And one of them is just saying, this is how I taught my kid how to read. And we've all had those kind of conversations at the playground or homeschool accountability groups, right? So he's learning this poem here. I like little pussy, her coat is so warm. And she talks about how he's going to learn those words by sight in those two lines here. She's going to have him try to find those words in a passage of other words. And then he's going to learn to make new sentences with those kind of combination of words. And then she talks about the second lesson. So that was all the first lesson. And then she talks about Tommy's second lesson. And in this one, she's doing a phonics lesson. So that's where this idea of sight and sound, that you're pairing both of those things together. One is not completely dominating the other. So she says in Tommy's second lesson, he's learning to spell the word coat. So in the nursery rhyme, you remember, I like little pussy, her coat is so warm. So now he's going to take that word coat and he's going to learn phony manipulation with that. So in here she says, can you take away the k? Now what word do you have? Which is oat, right? What would happen if I add a b at the beginning of oat? What word do I have now? And then she says you could change that into float, goat, moat, right? That you're using that kind of what we call word families often you'll see, which is this kind of ending of the word, and having these words that rhyme. And so since they've been learning these nursery rhymes, they should be good at coming up with other words that sound the same here. And then she said, incidentally, he's probably going to say note, which isn't spelled O-A-T at the end, right? But we do not ask him to generalize. We have only left in the fact that N-O-A-T does not spell note. He will learn that by and by. And so then she talks about combining different letter combinations with those same words. Warm was another word that they used. So you can see, like with coat, I mean, we're jumping into long vowel sounds here. Warm, I mean, that's really hard. The A followed, an A when it comes after the W sounds more like an O than an A. We have the bossy R. I mean, these are harder concepts, harder combinations than most kids would kind of start with here. And then she also talks about how it's important for them to read clearly and have perfect enunciation. She really stresses that, and I think that's a key. I unfortunately didn't do that with all my kids as much as I should have, I think, looking back on it. And now that I read that, like, that's a really good time just to practice reading clearly and distinctively, having some of that recitation practice that she talked about in her curriculum. Sherry asked if I will put these on YouTube. Yes, I will save this and it should be on YouTube later today. So if you have someone you want to share this with, on Instagram, I'll save it to my stories, but the Facebook video, I'll also put it on YouTube in case you know someone who's not on Facebook and would like to share it with them. That'd be great. All right, so before I jump in to talking about the sight and sound, does anyone have any questions about kind of Charlotte Mason's method of teaching reading, her philosophy, her thoughts on teaching reading? I don't want to just keep going here. Hey, Haley, welcome. I know some people are hopping in, so you can go back and watch the beginning part here as well. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, how will I know if my child is ready? What age is this for? And so Miss Mason talked about beginning formal reading lessons at age 6. So this curriculum is really written for kids ages 6 and up. There were some people who were part of the beta testers who had kids who were 7 or 8, and they had been trying different things and they weren't really reading yet. And so you can definitely use this with an older child. Excuse me, the people that had those older children that really had a great success using this with them. So I really don't recommend this before age 6, but that doesn't mean you're not doing anything. And I think that's like this misnomer, like, oh, because she says we can't teach reading till 6, like, I'm not gonna do anything. In home education, in that volume I was talking about, she really does talk about some of those foundational skills and practices that you will want to do, like with your kindergartner, with your 5-year-old, to get them ready. And in here, she made like a really big deal out of it. Like when it was Tommy's birthday and he turned 6, now you are old enough to learn how to read, you know? And by then you have the interest, you have the motivation. Their phonemic awareness skills have grown. There's kind of like this continuum, and I'll try to find a link to these and post it. And I don't know if I can post it on Instagram or not, but I'll try to figure that out. But if you Google like phonemic awareness skills chart, it'll show you at what ages kids have different skills. And there's these certain ones that don't come until the end of age 5, age 6. And those are like the really key skills that are going to help reading take off super fast. So it really does benefit you to kind of wait for those formal lessons, these formal sit down, we're going to look at this rhyme, we're going to take these words apart, we're going to learn these word families, those kind of formal lessons, but that doesn't mean you're not doing anything. So real quickly, I just want to talk about a few little things that you can do if your kids aren't ready for formal lessons yet, or you can try these and see if your kid is ready. So even if like they're, you know, late 5 and you're not sure if they're going to be ready, here's some just kind of ways to tell. So again, I said, you know, studies have continually shown that one of the key factors in a child being able to learn how to read is phonemic awareness. So this is all oral, and these are the kind of things that she talks about in home education. And one of the things I just love about Charlotte Mason is that science and studies continually show that what she says is true. So, you know, she's saying do these oral kind of activities before they're 6 to get them ready. And now these studies are coming out and saying, oh no, you should be doing these oral activities so that you can build reading readiness. And they're so very similar, which is so neat. So in terms of phonemic awareness, your child doesn't need to know necessarily all the names of all the letters before they learn how to read. But they should know the key sounds of most of the letters. So these phonemic awareness activities are focusing on sound, okay? It really doesn't matter if you know that that's the letter, I'm trying to think of one, C, right? Because C doesn't make the C sound in most of the words that it's in. It says K. And so focusing on the sounds and building that kind of sound awareness is really more important than whether they know that that's the letter Q. You need to know it says Qua with a U usually to learn how to read. So one of the things she talks in there about, you know, little kids playing with letters, puzzles, those little foam letters that go on the bathtub. I love the little leapfrog magnet thing where you put the letter in the leapfrog and it makes the little sound. My kids played with that constantly. I'm glad we don't have it anymore because it was a little loud. But for a short period of your life, that is a really fun thing to have. Does anybody have that on their fridge? Do they still make those? I hope they make those. But yeah, but just playing with those letters. We would play I Spy a lot, learning different sounds. So you'd be driving down the road, and instead of saying like, I spy something blue or I spy a balloon, you could say, I spy something that starts with B, B, B. Can you find something that starts with B, 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 B? And they'd be like, balloon, I see a balloon, right? You're like, yes, balloon starts with B. In the grocery store, this is a great way to like keep them entertained when you're trying to grocery shop. And you know, my kids would be all over me and all over the stuff in the store, and I'm trying to grocery shop, you know, but I'm like, okay, on this aisle, we're going to look for something that starts with the B, 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 and it's yellow. Can you find it? And then I'm like, banana. And I'm like, yeah, you found it, you win. You know, okay, let's do another one. And if you have older kids, it's fun too because they can start, you know, they can play with and show the little ones like, oh, this is super fun. This is a great game. So we play those I Spy games with sounds a lot. Another one is getting them to learn what it means that words rhyme. And so if you're reading them a lot of nursery rhymes, you're singing a lot of songs with them, you're reading a lot of poetry, this will be easy for your kids to kind of internalize it. But they should be able to hear that rhyming sound. And that's really going to help when they start learning these word families. So I would just, simple 5 minutes. We're not talking about sit in your chair for 30-minute lessons here, okay? This is something you can do over lunch. It's something you can do on the playground. Very simple. But, okay, I'm going to say 2 words, and I want you to tell me if they rhyme. Do they have the same sound at the end? So you could say bat and hat. Do bat and hat rhyme? And if your child's not able to do that, that's a skill that you really want to kind of work on before you start formal reading lessons. So they should be able to tell you, no, yes, bat and cat end in at. So they do rhyme. They end in the same sound. Or what about bat and bad? Did those rhyme? So those are very close. That's going to be a harder level skill. Another kind of level skill with the rhyming. So at first, you should be able to give them 2 words that rhyme or don't rhyme, and they should be able to tell you yes or no. And then the harder skill is you say a word, and then they give you back a word that rhymes. So I see a tree. Can you give me a word that rhymes with tree? And if they're not able to do that, then you can kind of give them, again, some help. Okay, do tree and bee rhyme? Do tree and table rhyme? You really want them to have that kind of understanding of words that rhyme, be able to hear that. Another one is that I do with kind of beginning readers is, what sound you hear at the beginning of the words. You want to start with the beginning words here, okay? I'm going to say a word, and you tell me what sound it makes. And when you look at that phonemic awareness chart, this is a skill that's going to develop around age 4 or 5. So what sound do you hear at the beginning of cat? And they should say "k." They don't have to tell you the letter's name. What sound do you hear at the beginning of apple? Ah, right? So work on those beginning sounds, and then when they're good with that, you can work on the ending sounds, which is a harder skill. So the beginning sound awareness is going to come first, and then the ending sound. What do you hear at the end of dad? What do you hear at the end of mop? The vowel sounds, and that really, the beginning, that middle sound, really doesn't develop to age 6. So again, that's a good reason to kind of wait on that. And then another thing you can do if your child's be able to do all those things I've already talked about, so this will be at the very end here, before you start formal reading lessons, is working on putting words together and then breaking words apart. So that's called phony segmentation, when you break the word apart here. So I call it rubber band words and racecar words. So rubber band words, I'm going to say the word really slowly, like I'm stretching a rubber band, and then I want you to tell me what word I'm saying, okay? Okay. Dog. What word did I just say? Okay, and your kids should be able to tell you dog. And that's showing that they're able to hear sounds separately and put a word together. If they're able to hear it, then when they start to read it and they start to be able to put those together, that's going to help tremendously, because it's the same process, but instead of just hearing it now, I'm hearing myself and I'm looking at the letters dog. Okay, so we want to, again, build that skill orally first before we try to get them to do it visually on their own. So again, so rubber band is just saying a word really slow. What word did I say? Okay, and this will tell you the word is duck. Okay, so it's kind of like taking your rubber band and stretching it, and then you're going to let it go, and whoop, they're going to try to put the whole word together. If you want to get a rubber band, if you want to get a slinky, if you have a big snake, like whatever works for your kid, be creative. And then Racecar Words is the opposite. So I'm going to say the word quickly now, and I want you to tell me the sounds that you hear in it. So like a race car, it's going to race by you, and I want you to tell me the sounds you hear. Okay, so I'm going to say the word mop. Mop. Can you tell me what sounds you hear in mop? Different kids like to do it different ways. There's different things you could do. They could tap it out. They could say ah. They could move pennies or like bingo chips down. They can do it on their fingers. There's different ways. But you want them to take that word that you said quickly and break it apart into its individual sounds. So this is like the last skill that a child should be able to do before they're ready to read. So it's easier for you to give them the word slowly and for them to put it back together than for them to hear each individual sound. That'll be the hardest skill. And then you're kind of ready for those formal reading lessons. So I hope that helps you play some of those games. Summer's a super great time for that. I mean, when you're in the pool, you could be playing I Spy, something that starts with the d, d, d sound over there. Diving board, right? You can kind of play these games. I'm going to say a word really slowly, and I want you to tell me what word it is. Ooh, right? And they can say pool, you know, ball. I mean, you can be creative here. But again, it's just working on these kind of sounds in a way that's playful. It's not formal lessons where the child's sitting down and you're teaching them these sounds and reading. So if you want to know if your child is ready for formal reading lessons, I just encourage you just to kind of go through those different activities that I said and kind of see how they do with those. And if they're struggling, then they are not ready to learn how to read yet. They don't have to have mastered them all completely, but they should really be doing fairly well at that kind of oral phony manipulation before they start reading. All right, so moving on to formal reading lessons. So again, before I kind of put this all together, I had been creating my own. I had been taking nursery rhymes and making my own list of words and trying to come up with my own sentences. And that's like a ton of work, right? And so it was great. My kids loved it and they learned how to read with it. And it was really helpful when I was teaching other kids how to read. But, you know, it was hard for me to say to another homeschooling parent, well, this is how you do it. When I knew it was taking me tons of time every week to come up with the poems and come up with the cards and come up with the stories. And so I really wanted to make a way that would be simplistic for parents, that they could just open and go, here's how to teach your child how to read using these methods and the philosophy that Charlotte Mason talked about. And then well, over a year ago now, I was on archive.org, which is like what I do in my free time. I love archive.org. There's like the coolest books ever, old books that you can just totally look at. And so as I was looking around at archive.org, I found this book and then I went and bought it. It's called The Natural Method Reader, oh wait, this is the first reader. Well, I want the primer. Where did I put that? But anyway, there's the primer, which is the one that I based this curriculum on. So now you know there's more in the series. But in this, it takes a nursery rhyme, and then it takes the words that the child learned in that nursery rhyme, and then it gives them a story, a prose story, using that. So instead of me having to come up with my own sentences based on like Humpty Dumpty every week, I was like, oh, this book does it for me. This is amazing. This is what I needed to make it accessible for parents. So I took that public domain book and I took the activities that I had been using to teach sight and sound for years, and I put them together, and that's what's in 100 General Lessons. And we had people beta testing it this past year, and I kind of added some more lessons and slowed things up based on some feedback. So now there'll be a volume 1 and a volume 2. So right now the one that's out is volume 1. So this would be, you know, for starting out with a child who's around age 6, who's kind of shown that readiness and teaching them how to read. So let me just show you real fast the different things that come with it, and then I'll kind of walk you through it. So first of all, there are letter tiles. So these, let me show you them, are on this like thick glossy cardstock. And you know, someone had said something like, I already have like Scrabble letters or like little letters. Can I use those instead? You can, but I really like these ones because, well, A, the font's the same. It's that primer font. But it also, I've color-coded it. So the sounds that are going together are on a card. So, so for example, like CK makes only one sound. So even though it's 2 letters, if you just bought like Scrabble pieces or some other little magnet letter tiles, you would have a C and a K. And so when they're trying to build the word, they're not saying da, k, k. But if they see those 2 letters in 2 different sound boxes, which I'll show you in a second, it can be really confusing. So having the letters go together, let let me see, here's another one like S at the end of a word. It just makes one S sound, or LL, like ball, right? It's not but, and so having those tiles on one card really does help with that. I laminated mine. If you don't have a laminator, Staples will laminate it for you for like super cheap. I mean, you don't have to laminate them. It's a pretty thick cardstock, but if you want to, you can. And now when you're doing the word building lesson, you don't want to put all of these out for your child. That'd be so overwhelming. So just pick out the few that you're going to use for that word building lesson and put the other tiles away. I stored mine in this very expensive, fancy sandwich bag. But back when I was teaching multiple children, I had like a tackle box or a B box, and you could store like all the A's, all the B's, all the C's, and store your letters that way if you want to. So there's different ways you can do that. And then talking about building the word. So these are the word building boxes. So you can see it's a 3-letter word, a 4-letter word, and on the back is 5 letters. And again, these sounds go together. So, you know, if I'm building duck, for instance, okay, if I'm building duck, it would be D, K, and then the C and the K are in one box. There's only 3 sounds. And the reason there's a green circle and then the red box, so I tell my kids, this is green means go and red means stop. So when they're first learning how to blend words by sight, now remember, they've already learned how to blend those words orally because you've been playing those games like how many sounds do you hear in cat? You know, say cat. So they've already doing it orally. So doing it visually here should be shouldn't be that tedious of a process. But I have kids take a race car, and you're going to start at the go, and you're going to say each sound. So you would say k, a, t, and then I want to make my car go faster. And this time I'm not going to shut my mouth. At, cat. Okay, and that's a very simple, basic one, but it gets harder when the words are more complex. And you're just getting them to go from stop, go to stop, and saying that word faster. And that's why I like having little cars, but it could be a My Little Pony or whatever your kid likes to use there. So these are called elegant boxes. These are sound boxes. So you're breaking, again, you're breaking that word up into its individual sounds, not its letters, which is another reason why I think it's good to have letter tiles where if the letters make one sound like A-Y, like D, A, it only has 2 sounds, right? So I want a D block and then I want an A-Y block. I don't need it's not d, a, ya, right? So that's a little confusing. So using those kind of word blocks helps them with that. So for the sound lessons, for that, that phonics, they're going to use the letter tiles. They're going to use the sound blocks here, and they're going to learn to sound out words, do that phony manipulation I was telling you about, like in her volume where she wrote, they take coat and they turn it into boat and goat, right? They're going to learn in the lessons. There's just really simple what you walk through and say so that they can learn that phony manipulation. Also then, so since we have the sound part, we need the sight part, right? So included are the sight words. So for each lesson, they're the sight words that they're going to learn. And what I did, you can see all those. Again, this is on that glossy kind of cardstock here. And what I did is I cut them out, and I cut out where it says lesson 1 up here, and then I put them together with these little clothespin things, or you can use a paper clip. The ones that go together. So for example, like this one, lesson 85, and then I have all the flashcards that go with lesson 85 behind it. And then I stored them all in this little index card block. But again, you can just use what works for you. Just cut out one lesson at a time. And then what I would do is I would take the words that my child mastered. So for example, so for this lesson, if the only word that they were still kind of struggling, weren't 100% sure with, was cupboard, I would keep that one out, and then I put these away. We don't have to keep practicing these over and over and over and over again. And then I would use cupboard and kind of in these review games. And in the packet, there are different review games that you can use for these flashcards if you need them. So anyway, so these are the sight cards. My 6-year-old daughter knows her sounds and started reading some consonant, vowel, consonant, and 3 sight words. Would this be too advanced for her? No, I bet this would be perfect. That's a great starting point. All right, so let me go through this packet here. So at the beginning, I kind of give you some of that preliminary information that I've been talking to you now, like, is my child ready? What does Charlotte Mason have to say about teaching reading? So that's just stuff for you. And then we get into the stuff for the child, okay? So the first lesson is a sight lesson. So this first little nursery rhyme here, another reason why I loved this book was because of the illustrations. They're just so adorable. So the first rhyme is ABC, tumble down D. The cat is in the cupboard and can't see me. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to read it to your child, pointing to each word so they can see them. And then you're going to show them the flashcards. So I would show them the, and then I would say, can you find the in the poem? So I had just read it to them and pointed to each word. Can they go back and find the? I know some people will use like a highlighter to highlight the words as their child found them. That can be super fun if your kid likes that kind of thing. And then they would make these words in either a tray of sand, a tray of sugar, a tray of shaving cream on a chalkboard. You know, be creative here. But it's just in a fun, tactile way rather than just writing them on a piece of paper. Especially younger children who might not have that super great fine motor coordination yet. You can buy that kinetic sand that sticks together and doesn't go everywhere. I like that better than shaving cream and sugar. A little messy, and I don't really want ants in my house. But you know, just like an aluminum tray that they can practice these words on all the time. Okay, and then you have the next lesson is the sound lesson. So in that poem was the word cat. So now we're going to learn that at family. And so these are words that you would say, and your child would build them on here with the letter tiles. And again, we're talking about blending. And then they're going to have a reading lesson. So they're going to take what they've learned. If they've learned these sight words in the nursery rhyme, then they should be able to read that rhyme, and then they should be able to read other sentences with those same exact words. So they should be able to read, the cat is in the cupboard. The cat can't see me. So those are those same words again. So again, like the point of this is to build their interest, right? To have those living ideas, not have it be a drill and a drone and a dreary weariness of repetition here. So, you know, these sentences are interesting. The cat is in the cupboard. The cat can't see me. They're way more interesting than Sam sat on Bob or whatever. Or the fat cat sat on the mat, right? Which is very typical. And then the next lesson is a sequencing lesson. So in this lesson, you cut out the strips. Sometimes it's just the words, but at the beginning it's strips here. And then your child is, and then you would shuffle them together, and then your cat is going, your cat. If your cat can read this, like you should have a YouTube channel, that'd be awesome. Your child is going to, okay, remember the rhyme? It starts ABC. Which line says ABC? And they have to find it, and they read it to you, and then you glue the poem back together. So this is just another practice with reading, but also the sequencing skills really help them. I mean, it's just a higher level skill of being able to sequence something back together. So then you also know too that your child isn't just reading these from rote memory. If they're actually able to read the line out of sequence and then put it back together, it shows you that they actually do really know these words. All right, and then it kind of just keeps going from there. So the next story is Little Jack Horner. You're going to show them the sight words for that. They're going to try to find them in the rhyme. Here it says, give them the word Christmas. That isn't one of the sight words, but I mean, your child's, I mean, who doesn't love Christmas, right? That's a great word. They're just going to learn that word. They're going to look at it, and my son and nobody else told me anybody ever had trouble with it, right? It's that motivation that gets them to want to learn those complicated words. Then they have a sound lesson here. Then they have that sequencing that I talked about. Now, if you go on to gentlefeast.com and go to shop, and one of the drop-down menus is sight and sound, you can read more about this, but you can also try these lessons that I'm showing you right now for free. So you can try the first 10 lessons for free and see if your child's ready, if you like it, if this would be something you'd want to do. So the ones I'm showing you right now, you can actually try. And then there's a reading lesson. So you can see here, these are the words that they've already learned here. So he's already learned I and am and eating and plum and Jack from that sight lesson, from that rhyme. So now he can read this story. And this is super interesting. This isn't, again, a boring drill of words. I'm eating the Christmas pie, said he. And we want to teach our kids to read with enthusiasm and enunciation. And these stories really lend themselves to that really well because they are super interesting. I put in my thumb, said Jack. I pulled out the plum. And then the next one is that phony manipulation I talked about. So can you make the word cat? So with their tiles in the letter board, they're going to make the word. Can you take cat and change one letter to make the word mat? So again, you're only going to lay out the tiles that they're going to need for this lesson, so it's not super overwhelming. So they have to think about what makes the sound. What do I need to take off from cat? My mom said only one letter. That's key because sometimes kids will want to take the whole word off. No. We only need to change one of those from cat to mat. And then they're going to keep making those to kind of review that short A sound. And then you'll see these throughout for the different sounds. So this is with the short A sounds. So now they should be able to read these different short A combinations. And then there's another sweet little reading lesson, again, with Jack Horner there. So the book just kind of follows that pattern. Oh, wait, there's a couple more things. Let me show you. So there are copy work lessons. So this lesson is reading and copy work. So your child would read this, and then they would do the copy work here. And if your child's still just really learning how to make all their letters, then you you can skip this copy work for later. You don't have to do it if it's something that is way too hard. But it is a good skill to be able to, okay, do I really know this word? Can I actually write this word? And you'll see that in here as well. There are different activities where it says, you say the word to your child slowly, and they'll write it on a chalkboard. So for this one, Little Miss Muffet. And I love this one because it has the word frightened in it. My son thought that was awesome, that he could read this big, huge word. And I mean, think about it. Think about how many phonics lessons a kid would have to have before they could read the word frightened. I mean, we have a consonant blend at the beginning. We have the IGH sound. We have an EN ending and then an ED ending. And I mean, that's a huge word, right? If I had to learn all those sounds before I could learn it, but everybody's going to learn frightened because this is awesome, right? This lady's getting scared by a spider. And then the next one, so they're learning the A sound spelled AY. So again, like in Miss Mason's examples in her volumes here, they're not going to learn. She said it doesn't have to be all these steps. It's not, I'm going to learn all my consonant, vowel, consonant, all my short vowel words. And then I'm going to learn blends. And then I'm going to learn the vowels with the silent E added on it. And then I'm going to add these more complex vowels. And I think that's really wise. I really saw that with my kids. Like I was telling, if you missed the first part, back when I first started teaching kindergarten, the place where I was at really wanted us to use this phonics only curriculum. And I really saw that the kids really got stuck on the A only says ah, and the I only says because they've been doing it for a year and only reading those sounds with that word. That why, trying to teach them the long vowel sounds was really difficult. And so when you kind of teach them in tandem, it really does make sense. They're going to know that the AY day says A, right? And they're going to make these words with it. But on here it says, say the word slowly to your child, and then they'll copy it onto a chalkboard. So can they write the word as well? Not just read it and see it, but can they write it? Do they know how to internalize that word? Okay, Instagram is telling me I only have 1:18 remaining. I didn't know there was like a time limit on Instagram. I guess it's an hour. So I will start another one if this one ends. So all you Instagram folks, just hang on, and when this one stops, I'll hopefully be able to start another one. I don't know. I've never done Instagram Live. Let me just show you there's a few more different activities. So that pattern just kind of repeats with the nursery rhymes. Yes, if you go on to the website, you can see a table of content. So it'll show you which nursery rhymes, what sounds are included. You can order it printed, so it would come spiral bound, just like this. So there are a few games in here as well. Like I talked about, there's some review games. This game is like Chutes and Ladders, where they're reading the words, just to kind of vary it sometimes so it's not all the same thing every time. Yes, Angela, I'm hoping to put it in my story here, so thank you. So it goes through, they're learning consonant blends like st and mp. They're learning all the short vowel sounds. They're learning two E's say E, like in sheep, like little Bo Peep. Two O's say ooh, like in cock-a-doodle-doo. And again, these are fun. They're engaging. All right, I'm going to stop this and save it. Hold on, my Instagram thing just totally died. So I'm going to try this one more time. I don't really know what I'm doing here with this, so I'm going to do it again. Okay. Well, I think it died, and I don't think it's going to let me do another video. Wow. Okay, it's not going to let me. Anyway, so that just gives you an idea. It's kind of that same pattern, a sight lesson, a sound lesson, phony manipulation, reading a story that shows that they've learned those words and those sounds. And yeah, so it ends with this one. This poem is Poor Dog Bright. So they're learning the IGH sound. And there's a little chart where they can color the rhymes that they've learned, and then it'll go on with part 2. So yes, Yvette, if you go on to gentlefuse.com, it's marked off 15% until the 22nd. So I really don't know what today is. Today's what? Oh, 16th. So for like about 5-6 days, I don't know. Yeah, so till the 22nd, it's marked for 15% off. So if you have more questions, let me know, and I'll come back in here and answer them for you. But thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful and you learned something, even if you don't use this. You know, you can take poems and rhymes and use her method for yourself. I just wanted to give people a tool to make it super easy that they could just kind of open and go and have everything they need and not have to spend all those hours like I was spending trying to make all this stuff to teach their kid how to read every week. So thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a blessed day. Bye.